What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? The debut of Zach Gallen and Merrill. Dbacks bounce back candidates for 2024, and is Ketel Marte incoming on an MVP season?
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to the always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. It is spring training season, and the Dbacks actually had an off day on Wednesday, but that's okay because it sets up a stellar debut for the rest of this week with Zach Gallen going on Thursday and Merrill going on Friday. And we'll talk about their upcoming starts on today's podcast with the Dbacks bounce back candidates for 2024, and is Ketel Marte about to have himself an MVP season. Thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube, so please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. We are slowly approaching 1,000 subscribers. Want to hit that mark by opening day. It is March 6th. Dbacks opening day is March 28th. So guys, please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. But now let's talk a little Zach Gallen and Merrill, because both of those guys are making their spring training debuts this week. We haven't seen either guy for the D-backs so far this spring training, and of course, they're going to be the two leaders in the D-backs rotation. Zach Gallen will be the opening day starter, something that has been a little bit more controversial the last couple of years. I don't know why, but we had this guy named Madison Bumgarner in the building the last, 3 seasons since I've taken over this podcast, and it was always a conversation. Is it going to be Mad Bum or Zach Gallen that starts on opening day? Gallen was always the better pitcher, but somehow it was always Mad Bum starting opening day. But now, none of that, no more concerns. It is undisputed. Zach Gallen starting game 1 of the season. Merrill will follow behind him. And in Thursday's game, we got Zach Gallen making his debut against the Texas Rangers, who, of course, took down the D-backs in the World Series. Zach Gallen was on the bump in the clincher game for the Rangers. He looked really good. So for Zach Gallen, your final game that you pitched from the regular season, or I guess from last season, it was the playoffs, was in the World Series, was against the Texas Rangers, where you were very dominant in that start, but the Rangers did a good job of working the count, and you weren't able to go as deep as you would probably like to if you're Zach Gallen, but still had a fantastic start against the Rangers in the World Series. And now your first start of spring training is again against the Texas Rangers. A great chance for Zach Gallen to get some vengeance against his team. Meanwhile, Merrill squares off against the Chicago Cubs on Friday. And just speaking a little bit more on Merrill situation going against the Rangers, he's someone, when you look at his approach to this offseason versus Merrill, they've taken two entirely different approaches to how they want to attack this offseason. Zach Gallen, because of the way he's wired, he's a guy that, he's an extreme competitor. Merrill Kelly's also an extreme competitor, but Zach Gallen's the type of guy where after the season ended, he was frustrated that the D-backs, of course, lost the World Series. Zach Gallen in the clincher game for the Rangers, where they win the game, of course, and win the World Series. So he was the final starting pitcher for the D-backs from last season, so I'm sure it might hurt him even a little bit more than some of the other starting pitchers in the rotation, despite, none of them getting the World Series victory. But for Zach Gallen to be the final starting pitcher, to know you could have maybe changed the outcome of at least the game you started if you, do something crazy like a complete game shutout. He almost had a no-hitter in the game, but alas, he eventually left the game. The D-backs eventually lost that game, but he has a chance for vengeance. on Thursday, and like I was saying with his offseason program, with the way he's wired, Zach Gallen, because of the way he's wired, he's someone, after losing that World Series game, he's like, I can't just sit on my hands. I can't just do nothing this offseason. I can't wait to pitch in a competitive game until next year. So Zach Gallen, as soon as the season ended, was already working on his arsenal, working on on his pitching stuff. Like, Zach Gallen has been throwing all through the offseason because all he wanted to do was grind as soon as that World Series ended. That's the kind of competitor that Zach Gallen is. That's the way he responds to what he went through in the World Series. That's how he responds to adversity. He needs to go and face it once again and try to push through the struggles that he faced in the second half last season, because we know second half regular season Zach Gallen and even to the postseason did not look the same. So I think Zach Gallen really this offseason has kind of been soul searching to figure out what went wrong in the second half of last year, because I think he feels like he felt good. He felt like he was doing a lot of the same stuff, but the results weren't there. So I think for Zach Gallen, because of the way the second half went, because the Dbacks lost the World Series, the way he responded to adversity was by going back into the lab this offseason, and that's what he's been doing the last couple of months. He, took a little bit of time off like everyone, but I think they said around like Thanksgiving, like Zach Gallen was back at it, grinding away, and, practicing every day like we're already in the full swing of the regular season. Meanwhile, Merrill Kelly, another elite competitor, he took a different approach, and he was like, you know what? I'm a little bit older than Zach Gallen. I'm a little bit more established in my family setting. He wanted to just spend as much time with his family. He wanted to not really throw. I think that's also a smart approach. Merrill Kelly is someone in his mid-30s, did throw a ton last season, of course, pitched a lot of big innings in the postseason. I'm fine with him saying, you know what, let me give my arm a rest for the next few weeks, for the next couple of months, and then as we get to spring training, I'll start ramping up my progress and getting ready for the start of the regular season. So Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, both had kind of two different approaches to this offseason, but both extreme competitors, and I trust whatever path these two want to go down to improve themselves, because I think the combination of Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly can be the best 1-2 combination in the division, if not the best 1-2 combination in the entire National League. I'm sure we've talked about it before, but you compare Gallen and Merrill Kelly to the Dodgers, like, of course, Yamamoto and Glasnow are absolute studs, but Yamamoto is a question mark. We haven't seen him yet pitch in the major leagues. Glasnow, freak of nature, but he is always hurt, so I do think you have to take a little bit of a grain of salt with both those guys. Maybe the upside is higher than a Gallen and a Merrill Kelly, but I also think the floor is lower with those two. You look at a San Francisco, Logan Webb and who? I don't even know who their number two is expected to be. Robbie Ray's not coming back to August, so definitely have a better 1-2 combination than those two. You look at the Padres, Joe Musgrove, Darvish. I like Musgrove a lot, but he's not better than a Zach Gallen, and I'm not sure he's better than a Merrill Kelly. It's close between those two, and Darvish is easily fourth among those four pitchers. So Dbacks, I think, definitely have an argument to have the best 1-2 combination in Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly in the National League, or in the division. And then if you expand it to the National League, I mean, the Phillies have Nola, Wheeler. The Braves have who? They got Strider, and I'm sure they got a bunch of really good starters. I don't know if you would consider Chris Sale their number two, but they have a bunch of good starters. Like, there are a bunch of good teams in the National League who have really good front lines, really good frontline duos, but at the top of that ranking, Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen might sit alone as the best 1-2 combination in the National League. Now we'll talk about Dbacks bounce back candidates for 2024. But before we get into that conversation, I first want to talk to you guys about Amazon Fire TV, because Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as Fire TV Stick, not the other way around, that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game's analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to the date on all of the latest in the world of sports. March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. And please don't forget to hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. Trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before opening day. So please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. But now let's talk about some Dbacks bounce back candidates for 2024. And again, some of these guys, I say bounce back, but maybe they never had a season to bounce back from. So these are guys who actually just need to improve from what they did last year, but we're still going to call them bounce back candidates because if these guys do bounce back this season, they do have major X factor potential. Maybe not on the level of like a Corbin Carroll or a Ketel Marte, but these still are really important players to the Arizona Diamondbacks. The first player I want to talk about is a little Alek Thomas, because this is someone that was a very high prospect coming up through the D-back system. Elite glove. As we always say, Alek Thomas is one of the best defensive center fielders in the sport. But the problem with Alek Thomas is his bat. And so for him, we need him to improve his bat. And he has to get better in the platoon advantage at the very least. Alek Thomas last year against left-handed pitchers as a lefty, not good at all. 143 average, 435 OPS against lefties. But if he's going to put up those numbers against lefties, he has to at least dominate right-handed pitching, and he has not done that yet. 253 average last year, 701 OPS, like a 297 OBP against right-handed pitchers. It's just not good enough. And for this D-backs lineup, they want to get to another level. Having a guy like Alek Thomas just get on base consistently. If he just turns into a good contact slap hitter that's hitting 280, getting on base 36% of the time, like if he kind of just does what Geraldo Perdomo did last year, like that's really all the D-backs need. Get some good contact hits, get some doubles, come through a runner's scoring position time to time. And then Alek Thomas is pretty fast. You look at his StatCast, I think he's like top 25, top 30 in sprint speed in Major League Baseball. If he can get a higher average and a higher OBP and just get on base more, because of that speed, he's going to wreak havoc on the bases and just add another skill to this D-backs lineup. We know how good Alek Thomas is defensively, but if his bat ever comes around, Alek Thomas all of a sudden turns into a borderline all-star player. So he's someone that needs to get better. We saw him come off the bench a couple times in the postseason and have some really big swings for this Arizona Diamondbacks team. And so need to see him take some strides from the plate, because it's just an area that has really held him back so far in his professional career. So Alek Thomas, please get a little better. Please get a little bit better offensively. Next bounce back candidate, I want to talk about Brandon Pfaadt, because like I said, Alek Thomas and Brandon Pfaadt are two guys who haven't had the breakout season yet, so it's hard to say they need to bounce back from something. But for Pfaadt, he did have a down season in the regular season, and if he replicates what he did last year, it just won't be good enough. So for him, he needs to really work on limiting the hard, loud contact, because I think that was the biggest issue for Pfaadt this past year. You look at the whip, 1.406 whip, 10.2 hits per nine. Gave up 22 home runs, 96 innings pitched. I think the loud contact was just way too much for Brandon Pfaadt. And we know how good he can be because we saw what he did in the postseason. 8 earned runs over 22 innings pitched for a 3.27 ERA, 1.091 whip, 10.6 strikeouts per 9 in the postseason. You'll take all those numbers from Brandon Pfaadt. If he can give you close to what he gave you in the postseason last year, in the regular season, Brandon Pfaadt all of a sudden is one of the best number 4 starters in Major League Baseball. And to become that, he's going to have to limit the loud, hard contact that he gave up this past regular season because it was just too many home runs and long balls for Brandon Pfaadt. So hopefully he can correct those issues in 2024. Next up, I want to talk about Joe Mantiply. Everyone had him as a regression candidate from 2022 entering 2023 because they thought he was just way too good in 2022. But now I'm like, I think 2023 was too much of the reverse where it's like, I don't think Mantiply is as bad as he was in 2023. I think the numbers bear that out. When you look at first half stats for Mantiply, 5.74 ERA. Second half stats, 3.86 ERA. So Mantiply is someone that got better throughout the year. I think for him, the biggest thing they need to improve on is the platoon advantage as well. Against lefties last year, Mantiply, absolute specialist as a lefty himself, 185 average allowed, 440 OPS. But against righties, 277 average allowed, 876 OPS. So I know we're going to use him as a lefty specialist, but you're still going to have to go against right-handed batters. So for Mantiply, he has to make those numbers a little bit more respectable against those right-handed batters. He can't do another season where he's getting absolutely torched by the right side of the plate. I know it's not going to be as strong for him as a lefty pitcher, but he just has to battle a little bit more in those kind of situations. So for Mantiply, I need him to get a little bit better in that platoon situation. And then the final guy that I want to talk about as a bounce back candidate is, of course, the man that's probably the biggest bounce back candidate in the Dbacks clubhouse, Jake the Rake McCarthy, someone that was really, really good in 2022. 283 average, 769 OPS, and you had 23 stolen bases in 99 games for Jake McCarthy. The speed was still there for him last year, but the offense was not. And entering next year, I just think he has to either get better at getting on base or provide a little bit more pop because you look at the numbers. I mean, the hard contact stats are just not there. Exit velocity, pretty mediocre. Hard hit percentage, pretty mediocre. Like those are not his strengths, or those areas are not his strengths. So I think for Jake McCarthy, I think going like that Perdomo path where you just get really good at plate discipline and you raise that walk rate, I think that's his path to becoming a really effective major leaguer. Because back in 2022, that 283 average, 342 OBP, like that's good enough. 427 slugging, like all those numbers are good enough. So if he can give you an average above 280, but then maybe bring that OBP to like maybe 360. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be a big pop guy, always going to be a gap power guy, never going to have a lot of over the fence power. So I'm never going to expect the slugging to be high. But again, I need at least singles. I need at least you to get on base. I need at least for you to draw walks, turn into Geraldo Perdomo in terms of plate discipline with the speed. Like for him and Alek Thomas, it's kind of the same thing. Make strides in your offensive game. Get better as a contact hitter, get better at plate discipline, get on base however you can because your speed is going to be so crucial for this D-backs team. And that's why I think Alek Thomas, Joe Mantiply, Brandon Pfaadt, and Jake McCarthy are 4 big bounce back candidates for the D-backs in 2024. Now I want to talk to you guys about Ketel Marte and his potential MVP season incoming in 2024. But before we get into that conversation, I want to talk to you guys about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is North America's largest daily fantasy sports platform. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. And the app has a fun new feature called Demons and Goblins. Demons picks are marked in red, and they are the scary picks that accelerate your heartbeat because you can win big money, as in 100 times your money. So if you bet $10, you can win $1,000. $100,000. If you're into the NBA, you can pick more than or less than on everything from 3-pointers made to turnovers committed. So download the app today and enter code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's code LOCKEDONMLB, all one word, and in all lowercase letters, and get that first deposit match up to $100. Join Prize Picks today. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right. Let's get back into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. And let's talk about Ketel Marte and why I believe he can have a potential MVP season this year, 2024. I believe, as I've said on this podcast almost every day during spring training, because Ketel Marte has raked every day during spring training. I come on this podcast after seeing another 2-for-3 day from Ketel Marte, and I say, you know what? Dbacks fans, I think Marte MVP type season incoming this year. I think we're going to get a season reminiscent to what Ketel Marte did in 2019, where he put up magical numbers and finished top 5 in MVP voting. And I think a season like that could be coming again this year. Marte, if you go on MLB.com, they have their position rankings, top 10 at every position. Ketel Marte ranked number 5. And I think at the end of the season, it wouldn't be crazy if you want to rank Ketel Marte potentially number 1. Now, you got Marcus Semien, you got the Jose Altuves of the world. That's not going to be easy, but I do think there's a path for Ketel Marte to being arguably number 1 on that list, because he has done it before back in 2019. If you want a fun, long futures bet on FanDuel, MVP for Ketel Marte, right now he's 1 spot behind Luis Arraez at plus 8,000 on FanDuel. If you put $100 down, you'll win $8,000 on FanDuel. So not too bad. You could put $10 down and potentially win $800 if Ketel Marte wins the MVP. I don't know if I would go that far just for him to straight up win the MVP, but let me make the argument as to why I think you can at least be in the conversation, because when comparing Marte to the other players in Major League Baseball, the candidates for who could be the best second baseman this year, I think it's 3 guys firmly ahead of Ketel Marte. Like, I think a guy like Ozzie Albies is questionable, a toss-up. I think a guy like Luis Arraez, questionable, toss-up. Like, you could tell me Ketel Marte is better than either of those two. You could tell me those two are both better than Ketel Marte. I think it's a conversation. But the 3 that I would have definitively ahead of Ketel, Mookie Betts is playing full-time second base, Marcus Semien, and Jose Altuve. So Marte would have to somehow leapfrog those 3 to be in the conversation as best second baseman and potentially MVP this upcoming year. And we need to discuss if that's possible for Ketel Marte, because you look at some of the numbers that those guys have put up in recent years. I mean, Jose Altuve is coming off, a little bit of a, not down season, but he was injured, or I don't know why he missed. I forgot why he missed most of the season last year, but he didn't play a full season regardless last year. So his numbers aren't as nice as they usually are. Only played 90 games last year, but still 311 average, 915 OPS in 90 games last year. Mookie Betts last year, 307 average, 987 OPS, 39 home runs, like absolutely insane stuff. And then the last guy, of course, Marcus Semien. He finished 3rd in MVP voting last year. 826 OPS, 276 average, but led the American League in hits, led the American League in runs last year, 29 home runs and 100 ribbies. So Ketel Marte definitely is going to have himself some trouble getting into that mix when you look at the numbers I just laid out. But when you look at the 2019 Ketel Marte, the numbers they put up that season is very reminiscent to the numbers that I just laid out for those other guys. Ketel Marte in 2019, 329 average, 981 OPS, 32 home runs, 92 ribbies, 10 stolen bases. So the best version that we've ever seen from Ketel Marte, that 2019 version, the numbers I just laid out were as good as any of the numbers I just laid out for these other guys. The Mookies, the Altuves, the Marcus Semiens, just as good. So we know the peak, the ceiling Ketel Marte, that 2019 version, is as good as any second baseman in baseball. But it has been a few years since we've seen Ketel Marte hit that level, right? That was 2019. That's 4 years ago now. So is it still possible for Ketel Marte to get back to that level of player that he was in 2019? I think it is. You look at his WAR from this past season, second best WAR of his career. The only season it was better was 2019. Look at his home run percentage, second best of his career last year. Look at his walk rate, second best of his career last year. You look at his hard contact stats, still up there, and actually you could make the argument even better last year than what it was in 2019. Exit velo slightly better, hard hit percentage slightly better. You can even look at something like BABIP, 300 BABIP last year, 2019, 342. So I think a lot of the numbers actually suggest Ketel Marte is coming off his second best season of all time, a bounce back season for Ketel Marte after struggling mildly in 2022. I have this theory: Marte is going to build off of what he did in 2023 and deliver us a season very reminiscent to what he did in 2019. I think what he did in the postseason was just a start. What he's doing now in spring training is a continuation. And I think it's all going to culminate into the regular season 2024. I think Marte is going to have himself a monster season where he potentially does put up numbers once again close to what he did in 2019, where he finished fourth in MVP voting. And if he's able to do that, no doubt Ketel Marte will once again be looked at as arguably the best second baseman in Major League Baseball. Now that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news, coverage, and insight. Please follow Locked On Diamondbacks wherever you stream podcasts. Please follow us on YouTube, Locked On Diamondbacks on there as well. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.